Happy New Year. And we're going to be having an episode that's a little bit different. Usually we talk about culture and language, but today we're going to be talking about philosophy in a way. And the philosophy that I want to have going into this last semester of high school for me, and trying to really enjoy the time that I have now. Now that my college applications are over, I realize that I have more free time, and I want to take advantage of that. And I'd like to share the philosophy that I want to use. So yeah, that's what our episode's going to be about today. I hope you all enjoy.
¿Qué onda? Soy Sebastián y este podcast es Otomi. For all of my non-Spanish native speakers, this is Sebastian, and I'm a high school student in the Bay Area. I've got the facts and the opinions. Join me as we discuss topics of society, culture, identity, education, and life.
All right, so let's get into this. First, I just want to give a little bit of background as to how I kind of started thinking about these things, these philosophical questions. I'm someone who tends to like to reflect a lot. I go out on walks daily for sure. I think it's good not only for my physical health, but also for my mental health, because being locked up in my room, confined to these four walls and my computer, can take a toll on your mental health. So I definitely think that it's essential that I go out and really enjoy the outdoors. If I go jogging, I usually make sure that I have time to think about life. You know, during the college application process, I was out running a lot too, but during that time, my mind was completely filled with thoughts of, okay, what essay am I going to write? Because for me, every second had to be used, at least while I was waiting for the results for my applications. And as I was applying to schools, whenever I'd go out, I'd be thinking of my next essay topic, how I wanted to address the essay prompt, because that was important for me. But now things are changing because that part is over. Yes, I do have to apply to some scholarships, but that part is over. Now I'm thinking forward into how I really want to enjoy these last few months, because something that I have noticed is that the last 3.5 years have passed by so quickly. I did not expect them to go by so quickly. So it's really, really important that I think take it a little slowly, smell the roses. And although I do want to remain productive, I want to enjoy things. And this is kind of sprouted from the philosophy that I've been reading in my English class. I'm in a AP English composition and language class, and there we do a lot of essay writing, but our writing is largely based off of philosophy, philosophers who write about epistemology, who write about ethics, who write about metaphysics, political economy. And they've definitely influenced me, because by exposing myself to these different views of René Descartes or Adam Smith or Bertrand Russell or all these different thinkers, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, by exposing myself to their different ideas, I've been able to kind of realize what I want to do with my life. And maybe it shifts your perspective. It gives you a different paradigm from which you can look into the world, and you can see, okay, maybe if I look at the world this way, I'll be overall happier. There will be generally greater utility in the things that I do because of my own perspective. Because in the end, the way you perceive the world, the way you shift your perspective, influences how you enjoy the world around you. It all has to do with the filter you have in your head. If you perceive something to be negative, everything's going to look negative because you're doing that to yourself. But I always want to keep a positive perspective of the world, just because that gives me better mental health, and more motivation to carry on and do my best in school and whatever activities and endeavors I have. But yeah, I was thinking, wow, why is high school going by so quickly? Or at least the last 3 years have flown by, and a lot has happened in the last 3 years that has made those semesters and years just, they felt long when I was living in them, but now that I've surpassed it, I've now gone by, I'd say, the most challenging parts of my high school experience. It's been, the time definitely has flown by. Why? Well, because I had directed a lot of my attention towards things like college applications, my extracurriculars, my SAT, which I was studying for. So a lot of time was dedicated to those things. Now, I did spend time in internships and volunteer work, things that I genuinely enjoyed. But there was also probably the fact that I was thinking so much about these things, and I really dedicated so much of my time to these activities that the time flew by because I enjoyed the activities and they kept me busy. I never was in a state of boredom, I can tell you that. For the last 3 years, I have not been bored. Maybe a little bit of freshman year because I wasn't really on track. I didn't start an intensive course load and intensive extracurricular load until my sophomore year, basically. I started my sophomore year. But that's the whole point. You really need to keep yourself busy if you want time to go by quickly. The only thing now is I don't want time to go by quickly, but I also don't want to be bored. So instead, I want to start appreciating the little things. So I just spoke about epistemology. And of course, this is not a very commonly used word. So epistemology is kind of the theory of knowledge and how it's acquired and what it means. I remember my first class where we started discussing epistemology was last year in my English class, where our teacher was just telling us, okay, what does it mean to know and what is knowledge? So we debated that for around an hour or so. And then he said, see, everyone has a different idea of what knowledge is. And philosophers have had different ideas of what knowledge is for centuries. Aristotle, Plato, everyone, very different ideas. And existentialism, all of it, many different ideas. And in the end, we still don't have an absolute response to that question, to all of those questions. So I've just been combining a lot of the stuff that I've been learning and trying to use it somewhat as a doctrine, and experimenting with it and seeing how it makes me feel and seeing how it makes me experience life and experience the little things. Because right now life is very, very monotonous. I have no physical contact with any of my friends. Of course I shouldn't because we're in a pandemic, but I really have not physically, like in person, rarely met my friends just because I'm very cautious about this pandemic. So now we're going to talk about my philosophy that is it's been an extrapolation of the readings that we've read in my English class. And this all ties back to me going on runs, really. I like to go on runs usually maybe around the hills, or I go around the marshes as well near the bay. And when I do this, a lot of the time they're beautiful sunsets. You can see it glowing over the bay, the pink sky. There are a lot of birds. It's pretty serene if you're there at the sea level. But when I do this, I do reflect a lot, but I have noticed that when I go out jogging, I tend to have earbuds in. I'm listening to music. And the reason I do that, or at least I used to do that, was because it would help me space out. I'd kind of get into the zone. The exercise would be a lot easier when I'd be zoned out listening to my music, vibing with it, and kind of with this out-of-body experience where my body's moving. I'm forcing myself to push myself physically, but in my head I'm very calm, and it's a healing experience from all the stress that I have to deal with during the day, right? And the other day when I was jogging, I took out my earbuds for a second when I was looking at the view. You could see San Francisco from this platform I was at. I was looking, I was like, wow, This is very, very, very beautiful. And I took out my earbuds. I wasn't listening to music. And I said, I can hear the birds. I can hear the water. I can hear all these different things. It's like music in itself. But it's different. I feel like I'm more present. For the 5 minutes that I sat there without any music in, it felt longer than the rest of my run. A lot longer. Just because I felt present. A lot of these times where I'm running, I put in the music, I zone out. Before I know it, I'm already opening the door back to my house and I'm coming back home, and then I go to take a shower. And it feels like the run never happened. Boom, I left the house and then I came back. Because the whole time I was in my head, I was thinking. I was listening to music, I was zoning out, and I was thinking, okay, how am I going to complete this homework assignment? How am I going to write this essay? And I realized that I'm not completely relaxing myself. If my mind were to go blank, that would be preferable. But what I was using the music for was kind of as a block from the outside world, a barrier where wearing these little earbuds, I would be able to block myself out from the rest of the world. Now, and that's the thing, the earbuds that I was wearing, because most of these paths that I go on don't have cars, just because I don't want to worry about me, spacing out and doing something stupid like running into the middle of the road. That would never happen, but still. I might go into a suburb where there are no cars, or I try to run along a trail, because there are a good amount of nature trails around here. They're kind of a distance from where I am, but once I'm there, I plug in my music and then I'm off to the races. But that's the thing. I use the music as a cushion to provide myself with a space where I would linger in my mind. I wasn't interacting at all with the external world, other than my feet hitting the ground and my lungs bringing in the air. That was my only interaction. I was looking forward. I was looking at the steps to make sure I don't fall. But at the same time, I wasn't processing that leaf on the floor, that rock on the floor, the trees in front of me. I wasn't looking at how my terrain was changing. As I go up the hill, I noticed that, it becomes a little more arid, and you have shrubs that are drier up here than down there, because down there's water. I'm not paying attention to those things because I'm stuck listening to the music in my little world. And that's an issue, because time flies like that. When you're stuck in your mind, when you're zoning out, you don't notice time. And that's why I could run for 2 hours and in the end feel like it was nothing. But then I take out the music and I'm sitting there for 10 minutes and it feels longer than those 2 hours. And again, as I said, it's a matter of perspective. Perspective is everything. So I changed my perspective. What I'm doing now is not listening to music. Like before, I was very cautious and making sure I wouldn't go into the road, or I always look both ways when cars are coming. Like that's a given. But the reason I'm doing it is because I need to interact with the world around me. I really do. I need to live in the now and not live in the future, which is what happens when I'm thinking in my thoughts. When I'm living in my thoughts, I'm thinking either of the past or the future, but never the present. Because if I were living in the present, I would be looking out and interacting with the things around me. But that's not what I'm doing. And when I was out on one of these runs, and I really noticed this, the discrepancy in my experience when I'm listening to music and when I'm listening to the birds tweeting and the trees rustling from the wind. That's a completely different experience. And I based it really off of this ethics reading that we read once in my class by Iris Murdoch, an Irish philosopher. And it's about the process of unselfing. Now, this ethics reading talks about how art is the most beautiful thing, really, because what it does is it causes one to give itself up, to unself. For one to unself is basically for one to give up their ego, their pride, and just dedicate themselves to something. And this can be a very complicated and a difficult thing to understand because it does require some reading, and it's tough to understand. But the whole point of unselfing is you can have all these problems. You have a test tomorrow, right? You have a test. You look outside, you look at, and you're just wallowing in this pain of the fact that you have to do your homework assignment and it's due tomorrow, and you just want to cry because you don't know how to do it. You haven't been studying. But then a bird flies by your window as you're looking out, and you see that bird and you say, whoa, that is a beautiful eagle. It's a bald eagle flying right above me. That's amazing. Wow. And in those 5 seconds that you notice the bird's up there, your mind goes blank, as in you no longer think of that thing that's worrying you. Your attention has fully been diverted towards the bird, no longer towards your problems. And that's the thing. What I want to do is control when I'm looking at the bird and when I'm thinking of my problems. The problem with me for much of high school was that I was always thinking of my problems, even with the bird there. The bird was there, but I thought of my problems, and the time flew by because I didn't take the time to look at the bird. So what I'm going to do now, and when I run, I take out the music because I don't want to listen to the music. I can do that when I'm in my home, when everything is the same, when there's virtually no interaction with something. But when I'm out running, when I can feel the nature, which is alive, I want to experience that. I want to feel the leaves below my feet. I want to see the trees around me, feel the wind. I can't truly experience that unless I divert all my attention towards it. Unless I stop living in my thoughts and start living in reality, in the present. Because that's unselfing. What I'm doing is I'm letting go of my ego. I'm letting go of my worries, my thoughts. I'm unselfing. I'm no longer being myself. I'm giving up that responsibility of, I have an assignment tomorrow. And I'm directing all that attention to something else. And that's a humbling experience, because what you're doing is you're giving priority something that's not at all connected to you. It's not intrinsically connected to you. It's external. Everything is external. You're interacting on an external basis. But your interaction with that thing, with that chair, with that tree, you're dedicating all your attention, and you're living in the present. And the time goes so much slower when you're living in the present, because you are conscious of every little thing you're doing. So that's my goal. For the end of this school year, I want to unself. At least unself more than I did before, which was not very much. But I want to unself so that I can experience the world now where I have less worries than I will in 5 years. Or next year, which I likely will have more worries. And when you have more worries, it's harder for you to unself, because there's so many things that keep you preoccupied that you don't have the privilege of going outside and getting your mind off of things. And a lot of people struggle with that. My hope is, I don't think that in every circumstance you have to always be thinking about about the future, about an assignment that's due tomorrow. Even when I go to college next year, I want to be I want to be living life in the moment, in the present, enjoying every second of being at the university that I have been admitted to and that I'm choosing to attend. And by doing that, I need to know when I want to struggle with my ideas and live up there in my head, internalize it, and when I want to live in the present and sacrifice all those worries that I have and devote all my attention to the things in front of me and completely unself. Dwell in the things that are around me, in the whatever I can sense, in the sense data. That's a term that's used by Bertrand Russell. But the sense data is basically the things around you that you can perceive and that you can touch and you can sense, which you don't know if they're really there, but you can sense them. But I definitely want to use those sense data to interact with the world around me because I know that that is something very valuable. That in my lifetime, for me to truly live life, I need to interact with the world around me. And that's something that I struggled with for the last couple years because I was always thinking about the future and what I could potentially keep doing. And when you enjoy things, like when I'm playing cello or when I'm playing guitar, I zone out. And when I zone out in that case, time flies by. I don't notice time. But my mind also empties itself. And that's another type of remedy of mental health, where in that case, I zone out, but my mind is clear and time flies by. In the other case that I'm talking about, which is unselfing for me as well, is where I'm looking out at the world, time goes by slowly because I'm not stuck in my head instead of interacting with every little thing that's happening around me. So I have to balance that. I have to balance the spacing out and staying in my head, which is an issue when I'm kind of confining myself to my mind, because that takes up time and you zone out. As I said, the whole day can go by because you were worrying about something, while a day can feel like an eternity because you're outside in the woods looking at the trees without any sort of distraction that could be caused by your cell phone, by music. But yeah, I hope for some of you at least this can maybe be something that you try to implement into your life. I mean, I'm not some psychologist or philosopher, but it's just something that I've seen and something that I think is worth consideration, because if I definitely am very happy with the outcome of high school for me and how all of my hard work has paid off. But I also want to make sure going forward that I know how to enjoy certain things. And that way there's a balance and I don't have to waste time worrying about doing things that don't really benefit me or benefit my soul. Like playing video games is definitely something that's fun, but I don't get as much out of it, I'd say, as going out for a run or a walk. Because there I'm interacting with a screen rather than interacting with the external world around me, which is something that I want to do to live in the moment. But yeah, I hope you could get something out of this. I really do. And thanks for tuning in. Bye.